Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the summer session of the class.
It's nice out.
Yeah, it's very nice out. Thanks for being here. Thanks for attending the class. Thank you for your evaluations. And got another good class session today. But first, does anybody have any Lisa Simpson questions? How about any Bart Simpson questions? If you were Bart Simpson and you were taking this class, what kind of question would he ask? Okay. So anytime you have any question, just email me, let me know. I'm here to teach, right? And you're here to learn. So we got the same slide. Be sure you sign, the students sign the attendance form, pick up an evaluation sheet, and sign up to meet with me as a team if you haven't done so yet. And just want a reminder to new community members to wait to use your smartphone and laptop until the break. Okay? So I mentioned, Zena mentioned Tuesday about stenography machines, and I pointed that out to her, to you in the slide, but I'm sure that no student knows what a real stenography machine looks like, and it's like this. You do?
I do.
Yeah, but you're not a student anymore. Okay. So this is used for court reporting, and it has a keyboard that you can press multiple keys at the same time. That's called courting. And this is the output that it produces on this tape. So you might have, during a trial, you might have a really long tape. And so what a stenographer does is after the court session, she has to go back and sort of translate that and type it in as real text. So each one of these lines represents basically a syllable, but luckily there are systems now that are smart enough to translate that into real text and save it as a text file or display it on a screen so that people who are deaf can follow along in real time. And that's how the captioning on TV is done as well. So these are out there. Okay. What you should be doing now if you're on a team, and I mentioned this last time, you should be doing stuff. And specifically the understanding the problem phase. So meeting with the person who suggested the project, going on the internet to see what other things are out there that addresses your problem, why they don't work, talking to other people, finding articles about either the underlying condition or solutions. So that's the survey technology part. And the next step is going to be brainstorming, which I'm going to go into a little bit now. Okay. Well, next slide. So, here's the countdown. 3 weeks from today are your midterm presentations. So it's the wrong assumption to say you can do all the stuff in 3 weeks. I mean, in the third week, you need to be working on it now because you need to have this information for your presentation. So you need to be doing stuff every week. Okay? Brainstorming. So the first thing in brainstorming is starting with a understanding of the problem, because you can't brainstorm solutions if you don't know what the problem is. So that's the first thing you have to do. So you want to think about all sorts of things that might solve the problem and just throw them out there, and don't judge whether they might be good ones or bad ones at the time. Just the idea is to come up with as many ideas as possible, even if they're really weird. In fact, I encourage you to explore weird, wild ideas. So one of the ways to do that is, what would they do in the future? What would they do on Star Trek to solve this problem? What would Harry Potter do with his magic wand? How could you use the Force to come up with a solution? So I'm giving you permission to suspend the laws of physics, okay, in coming up with ideas. Why? Because sometimes a really good idea comes after you come up with a weird one. So you just need to expand the space as much as you can to come up with ideas. Produce lots of them. One person talks at a time. Draw things, sketch things to make your point, build upon other people's ideas, and stay on topic. So at the end of the brainstorming, you're going to have all these ideas. They may be in Post-it notes. They may be, in your notebook or whatever. What do you do with them then? So you want to select the best design concepts, and so you just use a spreadsheet. And here's an example of one. So option 1, 2, and 3 are columns that present our different concepts, and the rows are design criteria. And so they could be things like, how expensive it would be, how long would it take to do it, and of course, aesthetics is really important as well, so that should be included in there. And some of you guys have projects that have predetermined design criteria, so maybe you want to include that in rows there. And the other thing on this one is that first column of numbers represents weights. So not all these criteria might have the same significance or weight. So maybe you want to do something that is really quick and low cost, so you may give those solutions that meet that criteria more weight. And all you do is multiply the weight by the rating for that option for that design criteria. Okay? Everybody sort of clear with that? It's pretty simple. Okay. And of course, some of the major things are, can you do this with your level of skill, with your budget level, with the time available to you? So those are pretty important. Okay. So don't forget aesthetics and coolness factor. So they should be on a row there, because sometimes aesthetics and coolness factor are the things that might sway a person for and against a particular solution. Because your user wants to look cool using something, and you would certainly want to work on a cool project, right? So, consider, your issues as well. So, here are the coolest people I could think of. Okay, everybody know the Fonz and Clint Eastwood, Mick Jagger, Bugs Bunny. If you have your own cool people, let me know. This is my generation's cool people. Okay. So I want to spend a little time talking about vintage assistive technology, because it's good to know how things have developed to the point we are now. And I want to start out with this cover, Popular Electronics, back in January 1975. And I recall the moment that I saw this cover in the magazine store. And I said, I'm going to do that. So I bought one of these Altair computers back in '75, put it together, and there was a bunch of other people in the Chicago area working on home computers. And we decided to meet, and the 10 of us sat around one table. Everybody in Chicago that had a home computer. So I still have this. I think it's considered an antique now. And then, some of the ads back then were sort of weird too. This is for an Apple II. What kind of man owns his own computer? So, can't women own computers? No, it's only men. And it's only men who are crazy enough to fly a kite in the middle of a thunderstorm. So that's sort of weird. So, I remember, when that came out, that was pretty interesting. So let's get into assistive technology. So this is early wheelchair. This is sort of interesting. The wheels are made out of wood. The push rims are wood. The seat is a wicker seat, also made out of wood. It can recline, and there's a third wheel in the back behind it. And it has a place to elevate the legs, so it's actually pretty functional, probably pretty heavy too. And here's some more of them. This one back here on the right actually has wire spokes, but again, sort of the same design, 1924. and this was looked good enough that it could be, you can meet the president in this wheelchair. Okay. Some other wheelchair designs, maybe not so comfortable. Obviously, the one on the left was started out as a chair, and they put the big wheels on it and a little wheel in the back. This one over here has the same sort of configuration, but that can't be very comfortable, but maybe inexpensive. Moving on, the one on the left is a Quest wheelchair. This company was sponsored by Foster's Beer, and they were in Sunnyvale. And the neat thing about this is that it climbs stairs. So it had, underneath there, it actually had a track mechanism that engaged the stairs and to enable it to climb the stairs. And the other thing that was neat is that the seat maintained a vertical position while climbing the stairs, okay? And when you got down to the ground, you could retract the tracks, and wheels came down, and you're able to operate it on flat ground using the wheels. Another stair climbing wheelchair is this iBot wheelchair, designed by Dean Kamen and sold by Johnson & Johnson for many years. And it's no longer being made, and it could climb stairs, but you really had to have good upper body strength in order to do this. And it had to be adjusted for your weight, otherwise you'd fall right down the stairs, so not that good. So here's a couple omnidirectional wheelchairs that my colleagues and I worked on at the VA in the 80s. The one on the left was the first design. Notice these wheels. They're sort of like wheels that the wheelchair has as the front wheels. So they're omnidirectional wheels. They have rollers on the periphery so it can move in two directions. And you notice this wheelchair, both wheelchairs have 3 wheels. And in this case, all 3 wheels are powered in the normal way a wheel would be powered. And by changing the speed and direction of each wheel, you could go in and move off in any direction, forward, backwards, straight left, straight right, and rotate around its own axis. So it's very maneuverable. The one on the right was the next design that we did at the VA, a little bit different wheel concept. The designer thought it was important to have a Recaro racing seat on it because of the aesthetics, okay? And it had a force-sensitive joystick on it, and it worked really nice, and they came very close to getting it commercialized, but it was still going to be a lot of money, so I don't think anybody has an omnidirectional wheelchair in the market. This one was called a Lexus. FES stands for Functional Electric Stimulation. So if you're a person who has spinal cord injury and the brain signals aren't getting to your legs, well, maybe a computer can generate those brain signals and in a coordinated way so that you could walk again. And this was an initial technique. Here's a stimulator up here, and what they have in this case is needle electrodes that actually go through the skin and connect to the muscles to activate the muscles in a pattern, in a walking pattern. You don't need all your muscles all the time when you walk. Certain muscles come in at different parts of the gait cycle. So this is what it attempted to do. A little bit more research was done and made the device smaller. This is Dr. Marcellet from the VA, and I think I was actually in this room when this guy demonstrated his walking. So it produced pretty good walking, but you still need that balance stuff, which is you need to have canes or crutches or something to help you keep your balance. This really isn't pursued that much anymore because they found that the electrodes in the skin into the muscle get disconnected, and that causes lots of problems. So they don't do this anymore. A lot of people are doing surface electrodes, but that has problems as well. Exoskeletons. This is an early chin controlled. You see the control in front of the guy's chin. and he uses that to control his arm. But you see that the whole mechanism is connected to his wheelchair. So he has to be in the wheelchair in order to operate it, which maybe is not very practical. But in a lot of these things, you have to go through a series of these prototypes to get a better understanding of how things might be done. So everything starts out pretty crude, but it gets better. There's a lot of these things on the market, even now, that are feeding aids. If you can't feed yourself, you're in a very dependent position. And so these are like robotic mechanical devices. Some of them are more robots. These two here are pretty much mechanical. They go through the same motion each time. I think on both of these, that the plate actually rotates so that when the spoon comes around, it can actually pick up something. But maybe not always. Can't eat a hamburger with a spoon, though. So an environmental control system is a way for people to control the electronic appliances in their room. It could be a room at their home or a room in the hospital. And I knew the company that made these. So on the upper left there, you see a display of functions. And it could be like turn on the TV, call the nurse, turn on the light, turn on the fan. And you activated it by sipping and puffing into a straw, which activated switches, which activated a rotary relay, which did the selection of function, and then you blew into it to activate it. So what you needed, this box here connects to all the AC appliances that you want to work on, and they've adapted TVs so that you can control the volume and the channel change with the system. So these were typically installed in hospital rooms where there was a person with quadriplegia, or in a person's home. Yeah, but a lot of wires, not very good. This one on the right is called Butler in a Box, and I met the guy who built this. This is a speech recognition device in the 1980s, so this was really advanced. You spoke to it and tell it, turn on the light, turn off the light, turn on the fan, and it would recognize that. And it used a device called X10. So these are through the wiring type of control signals that would turn on and off devices. And you see a lot of those on the market still. Okay. Eye gaze control. So if you're a person who is non-vocal and has problems moving your arms, you may need a device like this to communicate. So both of these use eye position. Need to be very steady on the one on the right because it was pretty sensitive to movement. And even the eyeglass ones required a lot of calibration. So not very practical. But there are systems now, there are apps now that can look at your eyes with the camera and figure out where you're looking, and using that system you can pick out letters by your eye. But that's not a very good system because we don't typically use our eyes to point to things, so it's a little bit uncomfortable. Okay. Here's another system. If you do have some hand movement but you're non-vocal, this device, there's a magnet that's controlled by your motion. You move it over an alphabet and hold it there to select a letter, to build up a word, to build up a communication, which is printed out or displayed above. Okay. I don't know if you remember the speak and spell systems, but this was a way that you can press buttons and make words and then have it speak. So a lot of people use this because it was mass produced, fairly low cost, and so this was a communication device back when. Artificial arms. So if you lost your arm in battle, you can have one of these prosthetics put on and get some protection as well. And it looks like there's just one way of moving the fingers, and it looks like the thumb is solid, so you can't move that. On the other hand, we have what's called the Luke arm. That was sponsored by the government, and I think they've already have provided these to some veterans, and these are again probably about $80,000 to $90,000. But if you're a veteran who needs one, the VA will provide it. Peg legs. So here's a guy, peg leg baits, and that's what a peg leg looked like, a real one, which is remarkably similar to this knee crutch that you might see nowadays. Sort of the same system. It's amazing how many people have problems with their feet and need a knee scooter and stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing. Prosthetic legs. There's some wooden ones on the left. These got to be really heavy, and if you're wearing a prosthetic leg, you don't want it to be heavy, right? But they look sort of ugly, but you can sculpt one to look really neat. This one has high heel shoes connected to it already. Prototype exoskeletons. The one on the left was built in the 1950s and made for workers to increase their strength and stuff. And this idea is coming back now. This is a new design. Forgot the company that's doing it, but it's made for workers to be able to pick up and move heavy things. And there's a whole other class of these things for working on stuff above you, so it'll help you provide force so that you can work overhead without fatiguing. But this sort of looks like the Hulk hand over there, right? But even students can do exoskeletons. So here's a couple students from Purdue who did this project maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And the ultimate exoskeleton is obviously Iron Man, okay? But the probably a state-of-the-art real exoskeleton is from Exobionics on the right, and they'll be visiting us in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. And then I was thinking I saw the Infinity Wars, and of course I think of everything as assistive technology. So the Infinity Gauntlet is actually a orthotic device that can control everything. So I mean, how great an orthotic is that? And the other end of the scale are 3D printed hands for kids, and I think Gary will discuss that a little bit more. Some other really neat projects is this steampunk wheelchair that actually has smoke coming out of the back and bubbles and everything, all sorts of neat controls. So that's sort of cool looking, right? I don't know how functional it is. And then Orange County Chopper did this design for a motorcycle user who's a wheelchair user. So you can see the wheelchair on there. There's a ramp that goes up and locks the wheelchair in position so that the guy can operate a wheelchair. And I'm sure all the stuff is hand controlled. So that's sort of cool too. So next Tuesday, we're going to hear from Sha Yao by video. She's out of the country. So what I'm going to do is play the video from last week. And she will be here for the Assistive Technology Fair. So if you have any questions, write them down and she'll be able to answer them. End of February is the Assistive Technology Fair. And today we have Gary Burke, who's right there in 3D. And so now we'll take a short break and get Gary set up. And so we'll be back in about 5 minutes. So be sure to sign the attendance sheet.